natural inherence of death in life. Our literature has failed us. Our schools have failed us. Our science has failed us. They have all worked hard to alienate us from life in the act of alienating us from death. We are raised systematically to dream of life as something, if not altogether purged of death, at any rate, ideally cleansed of it, detached from it. Early modern philosophy teaches us that we have a state of nature. In the state of nature, death and life are mixed together. Later literature reminds us that in certain times in the past, death was a major menace. It was seen as threatening life. But today, in the modern world, we have learned to keep death at bay. That's what we're all working for and towards. The realization of a life safe from death. For this we have our sciences, our vaccines, our pills, our drugs. For this we have our distractions, our entertainment. All of this reconstructs, reinvents life as something that is there as if aside from death. Fleeting, to be sure, but that is acceptable. That is, if not natural, at least normal, and normal is good. What is wrong with keeping death at bay? One thing that is wrong with it is that the practice alienates us from life as it is. Life as it is bad, we're taught. That's something that we experience in the state of nature as savages. Life as it is brutal. As much as life as it is has been demonized in the modern world, if only in the name of progress, the progress of man towards a life clinically purged of death, the result of our escape, of our attempt to escape from death, of our flight from death, has been a life of alienation, of radical alienation. Some might call it an inauthentic life. Death tamed. Death as a moment that can be tamed. What is death for us? Again, a threat, but also a moment that can be inscribed on a larger horizon of development, of advancement. It can be incorporated, domesticated. We can accept death. In the act of accepting death, we don't have to worry about, trouble ourselves with, understanding death. There is nothing to be understood there. It's just a fleeting moment. In earlier ages, prior to the modern betrayal of life, given the modern betrayal of death, in times where life had not yet been reinvented, artificially construed as something moving away from death, something that can be distanced from death. In times when Dorian Gray's delusion had not taken over the world, Dorian Gray being a character who works hard to conceal death, to pretend that death is not seated in the very belly of life, that death is something that can be delayed, postponed, cast aside, thrown under the rug. Well, in earlier ages, death was not a moment. It was life itself. We are mortals, say the ancient Greeks. The Christians remind us. Now is the time of our death. We are living out our death. There is no escape from death, no procrastination. To say, well, I will kill myself now, is to say, I will end dying. But that in itself is meaningless as long as we don't understand what death is. As Schopenhauer would emphasize, how do you escape from your will through an act of the will? You can't. That's absurd. You're merely reaffirming your will in denying your will. Your denial is an affirmation of the will. Thoughtless suicide is an act of violence, an absurd one, by which we try to escape from the miseries of a life of alienation from death. But we fall back into it in the respect that thoughtless suicide is thoughtless. In other words, the problem is not life or death, but thoughtlessness, or lack of reflection, or lack of openness to understanding. And this is what has been produced by our masters, the leaders of our modern science, of our modern discourse. Alienation from thought. A thought that accesses the interiority of life, the interiority of life being death itself. Death, then, not as something that comes later, but as the very bosom of life, the heart of life. Attending to that heart is to attend to the interiority of our everyday life. And yet we have distractions from this interiority. We have surfaces, and we become those surfaces to the extent that we forget about the substance. Death, then, is demonized. In the name of health, a euphemism for survival. In the name of normality. It's not normal to be concerned with death. The concern with death is an unhealthy obsession. We should care more about life. But what life? Eternal life? Or a life that pretends to be eternal in the fleeting? The hedonistic life. We stand today in alienation, and alienation carries with it violence. Violence as an expression of our denial, of our delusion, our denial of the inherence of death in life. We seek continuously, through systematic repetition, to deny the presence, the inherence of death in life. And our denial carries with it, of course, is pregnant with death. Violent, thoughtless death. And we exercise our violence every time we speak, every time we go to school, every time we say yes to our modern science. Technology itself is set up as an instrument to deny death. The instrument, of course, is primarily at its root, it is a logic, the logic of denial of the inherence of death in life. That inherence we are driven to forget of. We are in the habit of dismissing it as irrelevant, as of secondary importance, as something to be overcome. That, of course, is absurd. What we have there is the alienation of bodies from souls, or from soul. The zombification of man. Man denies death at his heart, and death reappears on the surface. So we are zombified. We're dead on the surface now, because we have killed death, so to speak, within us. Death that was supposed to be, in earlier ages, was revered as being the place where we encounter truth. A dangerous place, for truth lies in danger, and danger alone. The place where the divine discloses itself. But we have reinvented the divine as something that helps us keep death at bay. Please God, save us from illness, from all of our troubles, from all of our reminders of the inherence of death in life. Reminders, pain, suffering, everything that exposes, that incarnates a crack in the wall of what is considered to be normal. Sleep itself. If we could only avoid sleeping, we could keep working towards the establishment of a life without any reminders of death. Let us be clear, any reminders of the inherence of death in life. For death can be reconstrued as an ideal, as something that is out there. One day it might affect us, but if we take a pill, we won't even notice. In the meantime, we can keep building our tower, our life without death. And we can compensate for the fleetingness of a life devoid of death, or of reminders of death, by fostering diversity. Diversity. A euphemism, yes, for distraction. We need diversity because we need to be distracted from death. The unity of life being a mirror of death. But in distractions, in diversity, we have refractions of death. And so Death is tamed. Death is rendered inoffensive, safe. Diversity provides safety. Nobody can be taken seriously. Nothing can be taken seriously because everything is broken down into diversity. We have opinions, not truth, and not a path that leads from opinions to truth. We have mountains of opinions. We have factories that help us build opinions, refract truth, and refraction, distraction, entertainment is what we dedicate ourselves to. And we work hard. And in working hard, we don't have to think about the unity of things. The unity that mirrors the inherence of death in life. Meditations uncalled for is the thought of death a distraction from what is most important, namely the project of establishing a life free from death, a safe life, heaven on earth. Why do we forget old books? Why are new books being promoted? And beyond the new books, a new language, the internet language, bytes of language, moments of expression, texting. This is refraction. This is atomization. This is the breaking down of unity. This is alienation from unity. Once again, alienation from the inherence of death in life. We are the victims. The victims of a new science, the victims of a positivistic upbringing that sells us shiny, gilded facades in the process of alienating us from our own souls, from our own treasure. We're offered wealth in exchange for our true riches. A return to classical literature, so anything that does not fit the bill of the modern project, is dismissed, if only by those academics who look upon classical literature as something to be recontextualized, reformatted, just as life is today, just as death is. However, we have great classics that help us recover a sense of integrity, of the unity of life, a unity that cannot be recovered as long as we persist upon seeing death as an accident of life. Studying Shakespeare, for instance, can help us recover a sense of the unity of life, of a life pregnant with death. Nature has given us plenty of reminders of death. Sleep, the coitus, religion. All of this we see in Shakespeare. Our very dreams remind us of the true character of life. What does this teach us ultimately? It teaches us perhaps to let go of modern pretenses, of modern aspirations. At the very least, to deflate them, to deflate our enthusiasm when it comes to embracing modern aspirations. It teaches us to take a distance, to step back, to expose ourselves to a horizon of reflection that carries with it a treasure that no modern project has ever offered, offers, or ever will.